"Is that your drawing?" Claire Whitmore asked, holding the blueprint beneath the white conference lights. Ethan Cole froze beside the dead projector, one oil-darkened finger hovering over the tiny LC inside an unfinished circle. Dr. Marcus Hale reached for the page with a polished smile. "That's an internal revision mark." Ethan's toolbox hung motionless from his other hand. He pointed to the broken line running toward the cooling loop. "Then don't put anyone beside that engine." 3 hours earlier, Ethan had been beneath the basement air handler with cold metal pressing against his shoulder blade, and the smell of machine oil worked permanently into his blue maintenance shirt. The fluorescent tube above him clicked every 7 seconds, slightly out of rhythm with the fan. He noticed because Ethan noticed sounds other people learned to ignore. At 41, he had become skilled at making himself smaller in rooms that needed his hands but not his opinion. The faded patch over his chest read E. Cole. In his pocket rested a silver mechanical pencil that had belonged to his late wife, its knurled grip worn smooth where her fingers had once held it. His radio cracked. "Maintenance to 18. Executive projector failure." Ethan closed the access panel, wiped his hands on a gray shop cloth, and checked the time. Lily's school nurse had left a message about an insurance form that morning. Missing the end of his shift could mean another warning. Refusing an executive call could mean worse. He climbed into the service elevator with his toolbox against his boot. By the time the doors opened, the basement's hot metal smell had been replaced by cold air, glass walls, and expensive coffee. Through the conference room doors, Ethan saw Dr. Marcus Hale standing before a wall-sized rendering of an engine assembly. Investors sat around the black table while Daniel Price whispered to a technician whose hands were shaking over the projector controls. "Just fix the screen," Daniel told Ethan without looking at his face. "Don't touch anything else." Ethan knelt beside the console. A loose fiber connector had been forced in at an angle. He straightened it instead of replacing the whole unit, saving the meeting several minutes and the company a service call no one would remember. The screen flashed alive. Applause filled the room as Marcus announced a revolutionary thermal control architecture. Ethan began closing his toolbox. Then Claire lifted the printed blueprint so the investors could see the layout more clearly. Light passed through the paper. In the lower corner, almost hidden beneath Marcus Hale's printed name, was a small circle with a narrow opening on the right. Inside it were 2 letters. LC. Ethan's breath stopped. Lily had been 5 when she first drew that mark beside one of his early sketches. "Leave a door so Hope can get in," she had told him. Marcus noticed where Ethan was looking. His hand moved toward the blueprint too quickly, then slowed into a courteous gesture. "Ms. Whitmore, that copy contains obsolete notation." Claire did not release it. Her eyes moved from Marcus's hand to Ethan's face. Ethan stepped closer, not toward the signature block, but toward the cooling path drawn in broken ink. The dash section had once meant unverified bridge. On this page, someone had presented it as finished. "Mr. Cole," Claire said, her voice careful rather than kind, "have you seen this design before?" Every face turned toward the maintenance uniform. Ethan could feel Daniel watching his badge, Marcus watching the paper, and Rebecca Sloan already opening a leather folder at the far end of the table. He could have said the design was his. Instead, he studied the load code printed beside the test schedule. "You're running this today?" "That is not your concern," Marcus said gently. Ethan placed his toolbox on the carpet and pointed at the 3rd stage heat cycle. "It becomes my concern when people are standing near it." Claire's expression tightened, but she did not believe him. "Not yet." Marcus gave a sympathetic sigh and told the room Ethan had once worked in engineering before a serious professional failure. The words were soft enough to sound merciful. Then Daniel moved to escort Ethan out. As Ethan turned, he saw one final detail in the blueprint's author box. Marcus's name had been printed over a pale rectangular shadow, as though another name had been chemically lifted from the paper. The pale rectangle beneath Marcus Hale's name was faint, but Ethan knew what removed lettering looked like. "Step away from the document." "I haven't touched it." "Then there shouldn't be a problem." Daniel Price's voice stayed low and polished. the kind used in rooms where cruelty needed to sound like procedure. He positioned himself between Ethan and the table while Rebecca Sloane slid a cream-colored form from her leather folder. The projector fan hummed behind them, and the smell of hot dust mixed with coffee and Marcus's sharp cedar cologne. Ethan closed his toolbox carefully so the metal latch would not snap through the silence. Marcus turned toward the investors with a regretful expression. Mr. Cole worked in engineering years ago. After his wife passed, he experienced difficulties that affected his judgment. His tone carried no anger, only practiced concern.
Whitmore Dynamics chose compassion.
We kept him employed, preserved his health coverage, and found him work suited to his current abilities. A few people lowered their eyes toward Ethan's faded uniform. One man glanced at the oil beneath Ethan's fingernails, then moved his water glass farther from the edge of the table. I asked about the cooling line, Ethan said. This is not a technical review of your opinion, Daniel replied. Then let the safety team review it. That request has already been noted. The room settled into an uncomfortable quiet. Sunlight pressed against the glass walls, turning every fingerprint on the conference table silver. Claire remained standing with the blueprint in her hands, but her face had closed into the neutral expression of an executive refusing to be moved by emotion. Rebecca placed the form on the table nearest Ethan. At the top, in narrow black print, were the words Confidential Materials Access Acknowledgement. This simply confirms that you viewed proprietary information outside the scope of your position, she said. It protects you as much as the company. Ethan read the first paragraph, then the second. The language shifted halfway down the page. By signing, he would acknowledge that all concepts he had seen belonged exclusively to Whitmore Dynamics and that he held no authorship claim, past or present. It says more than that. It's standard language. Then standard language should be accurate. Rebecca's smile did not move. Daniel tapped the paper once with his index finger. You have a daughter depending on your insurance, Mr. Cole. No one here wants an unnecessary misunderstanding to affect that. The silver pencil in Ethan's pocket seemed heavier. He pictured Lily's inhaler inside the kitchen cabinet, the insurance envelope beneath a magnet on the refrigerator, and the message from the school nurse he still had not returned. He could have signed and walked away. Instead, he uncapped Rebecca's pen, drew a single line beneath the final paragraph, and wrote in small block letters, I acknowledge access, not authorship. He signed beneath his amendment and returned the pen without pushing the paper toward anyone. Marcus exhaled as if disappointed by a child refusing help. We gave you a way to keep your dignity. Ethan looked at the chair Daniel had placed against the wall, far from the table where every other adult had a seat. No, he said. You gave me a uniform and hoped I'd forget my name. No one answered. Ethan did not raise his voice or look around for approval. He crouched beside the projector, gathered the loose cable he had repaired, and fastened it beneath the console so the next maintenance worker would not be blamed when someone kicked it free again. Claire's attention moved from his hands to the altered form. Keep that original, she told Rebecca. Marcus turned slightly. There's no reason to preserve a handwritten objection on a routine acknowledgement. Claire looked at him. Then there's no reason to remove it. It was not belief. It was only a pause. But Marcus's thumb pressed hard into the edge of the blueprint, creasing the corner beside the test code. Ethan saw the numbers clearly now. The prototype was scheduled for a high-load run at 3 that afternoon. You can argue about the name later, he said. Do not take that engine through a third thermal cycle. Marcus gave the investors a patient smile. Mr. Cole was reassigned after his own calculations contributed to a serious test failure. I understand why this project may be emotionally difficult for him. Daniel opened the conference room door. Your work here is finished. Ethan lifted his toolbox and walked toward the hallway. As he passed Daniel, he heard the project manager murmur, his daughter's coverage renews next month. He won't risk it. Ethan stopped for less than a second. Daniel should not have known the renewal date. Before Ethan could turn, an alarm chirped from the wall console, followed by a mechanical voice reporting an unauthorized pressure adjustment in the basement cooling system. On the screen, beneath the warning, appeared the name of the employee assigned responsibility, Ava Bennett. The alarm had barely finished speaking when Daniel Price turned toward Ethan. "Stay out of it." "Ava's account triggered the warning," Rebecca said. "Then she can explain it." Ethan looked through the glass wall toward the elevators, where the red pressure icon pulsed on the building monitor. He knew that rhythm. A bad valve did not care whose name appeared on a screen. By the time the service elevator reached the basement, the air had grown warmer and carried the bitter smell of overheated coolant. Ava Bennett stood beside the control panel with both hands pressed flat against her gray skirt, trying not to shake while Daniel's voice came through the speakerphone. "You accessed a restricted pressure setting. You sent me the task code. There is no record of that." 3 short sentences. Then silence. The fluorescent lights buzzed above the pipes, and a drop of condensation struck the concrete beside Ava's shoe. Ethan set down his toolbox and listened. Beneath the fan noise came a soft metallic tremor, 3 quick taps followed by a longer groan. He took out a long screwdriver, rested the handle against his ear, and touched the tip to the pump housing. Ava watched him without speaking. "Did you change the pressure?" Ethan asked. "I opened the panel. The numbers were already moving." "Did you touch the manual override?" "No," he nodded once. "That was enough." Daniel arrived with a floor supervisor and Rebecca Less. Then 2 minutes later, carrying the calm expression of a man who expected the room to agree with him. "This is exactly why interns require limits," he said. "Ambition without discipline becomes risk." Ava's face tightened, but Ethan kept his eyes on the pump. He removed the service cover and found the valve tag folded backward against the pipe. The paper was soft with age and stained brown along one edge. When he turned it over, the date showed the valve had been due for replacement 8 months earlier. Beneath the delay notice was Daniel's signature. Ethan read it once, then wiped the grime carefully with the corner of his shop cloth instead of rubbing across the ink. "The valve is sticking," he said. Daniel glanced at the tag. "That doesn't excuse unauthorized access. She didn't cause the pressure change." "You can't know that." Ethan placed the screwdriver back against the housing. The metal answered with the same uneven rhythm. "I know the pump was fighting the valve before she logged in." Rebecca crossed her arms. "Do you have evidence she was instructed to access the panel?" Ava opened her mouth, but Ethan spoke first. "I gave her permission." Ava turned toward him sharply. Daniel's expression barely changed. "You did." "Yes." It was not true in the way Daniel meant it, but Ethan had shown Ava how to read the maintenance panel earlier that week, because no one else had bothered to explain the system she was assigned to monitor. He understood exactly what the sentence would cost. Daniel removed a disciplinary form from his folder. "Then responsibility belongs to you." Ethan signed before Ava could protest. The pen scratched loudly against the metal work table. The form meant the loss of his attendance bonus, and the attendance bonus was the money he had planned to use for Lily's school field trip and the insurance balance waiting on the refrigerator. He folded his copy once and placed it in his shirt pocket beside the silver mechanical pencil. "Mr. Cole," Ava whispered, "you don't have to do that." Ethan closed the pump isolation valve. "No one should lose a future over a broken part." Daniel gave a thin smile, as though kindness had confirmed a weakness. "Sentiment doesn't keep equipment running." Ethan crouched, removed the failed valve, and replaced it with an older spare from his kit, one he had cleaned and tested during lunch the previous week because the department's replacement order had been denied. Coolant dripped across his knuckles. He tightened the fitting, reopened the line, and listened until the groan disappeared. No one thanked him. Daniel simply told Ava to report upstairs for an exit review. Rebecca placed a 12-page agreement in front of her on the work table. "Signing this will allow the company to close the matter without notifying your university." Ava reached for the pen. Ethan saw the first page, then the final paragraph beneath it. He pulled out the chair beside her and turned it so she could sit. "Read page 9. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. Ava found the clause allowing Whitmore Dynamics to withhold her scholarship support if she disclosed internal safety concerns. Her fingers stopped moving. "Is that standard?" she asked. "It's protective," Rebecca replied. Ethan capped the pen and set it beside the agreement. Don't sign away your voice because someone made fear sound professional. He did not ask Ava what she knew. He gathered the stained valve tag, clipped it to his service log, and returned to the pump. Claire, watching through the basement camera feed without sound, saw only Ethan giving up his bonus, repairing the valve, and placing a chair beneath a frightened intern. Daniel saw nothing worth remembering. But when Ava slipped her hand into her pocket, her fingers closed around a small yellow USB shaped like a B, the one containing a file named EC_thermal_prototype_04. Ava's refusal to sign the agreement did not protect Ethan. By the end of the shift, Daniel had filed a second report stating that Ethan had interfered with an internal investigation and coached an intern to withhold cooperation. The language was clean, measured, and almost impossible to argue with. At home, the disciplinary copy lay beneath a grocery receipt on Ethan's kitchen table while the radiator clicked behind the wall. Lily sat across from him in purple socks, drawing a bird with small metal wings in the back of her math notebook. "Are you in trouble?" she asked. Ethan turned the paper face down. "I made a choice at work. Was it a bad one?" He looked at the unpaid balance printed on the insurance envelope near the refrigerator. "It was an expensive one." Lily accepted that answer with the solemn patience of a 10-year-old who knew money could change the way adults breathed. She went back to her drawing. Ethan unscrewed the silver mechanical pencil his wife had once used and cleared a broken piece of lead from the barrel. When he looked up again, Lily had written her initials beneath the bird. LC, enclosed in a circle with a narrow gap on the right. His hand stopped. "Why do you leave it open?" Lily looked surprised he had forgotten. "So Hope can get in." The radiator clicked once more. Somewhere in the apartment hallway, a child laughed and a door slammed. Ethan reached for the old notebook stored in the bottom kitchen drawer beneath tax forms and appliance manuals. Its blue cover had softened at the corners. Inside were early sketches from the years before his reassignment, mixed with Lily's crayon suns, crooked animals, and tiny machines she had drawn beside him while he worked. On 3 different pages, the same open circle appeared around her initials. One sketch showed an early cooling loop with a dashed bridge leading toward a secondary path. Ethan laid Lily's new drawing beside it. The marks were not merely similar. They came from the same habit, the same child sentence, the same empty space left deliberately in the circle. But a family notebook proved memory, not ownership. Marcus could say Ethan had drawn everything after seeing the company blueprint. Claire would be right to ask for something independent. Ethan turned another page and found a photograph tucked near the binding. It showed him kneeling beside Lily at a school science fair when she was 5, both of them standing behind a tabletop model made from cardboard tubing and silver tape. On the model's paper panel was the same open circle LC. Behind it, barely visible, ran a hand-drawn version of the unfinished cooling path. Ethan moved the photograph beneath the kitchen light. The date, stamp from the school photographer, sat along the lower border, nearly 2 years before Marcus's patent filing. Lily leaned closer. "That was the year my volcano fell over. I remember. You fixed everybody's projects." Ethan smiled faintly. The tape was free. His phone vibrated against the table. Ava had sent only 6 words. They deleted the wrong file copy. A second message followed with a blurred photograph of an old office scanner inventory label. She explained that the original draft had passed through a retired machine in technical archives. The server copy had been replaced, but the scanner might still contain temporary image data. Ethan typed slowly. "Do not copy it. Do not rename anything. Do not email the file. Keep the machine connected and step away." Ava called immediately. "You don't want me to send it?" "Not if you want anyone to believe it later. Daniel is asking where I am." "Then leave the room and call compliance." Across town, Claire received Ava's report and ordered the scanner sealed for forensic review. She did not tell Ethan. She still had only his warning, a damaged form, and the word of an intern he had protected. Marcus had also provided Ethan's old performance record, including the test failure that ended his engineering career. Doubt remained reasonable. But Claire paused when Marcus entered her office less than 4 minutes after the sealing request. "That scanner is obsolete," he said. "It was scheduled for disposal months ago." "I didn't tell you which machine." Marcus adjusted his cuff. Daniel mentioned an archive concern. His explanation fit. Almost. Claire looked through the glass wall toward the elevator bank and saw a facilities cart carrying a gray scanner wrapped in plastic. Ethan, arriving from the service corridor after Ava's call, stepped in front of the cart without touching it. "What time was the disposal order signed?" he asked. The attendant checked the tag. 12:43 this morning. Ethan placed the tag beneath the corridor light. The ink was fresh, and the approval bore Marcus Hale's digital code. Claire said nothing, but her eyes moved to Marcus. Then the scanner's small display flickered once. Beneath the plastic, showing the final cached page number before going dark, 47. The same page that had been blank in the company's official copy. Page 47 remained frozen on the scanner's dying display, while Claire Whitmore ordered the machine moved to a secure room instead of the loading dock. "No one touches the drive." "This is unnecessary," Marcus said. "Then it will be easy to prove." The wheels of the facilities cart squeaked across the polished floor, and Ethan walked beside it without placing a hand on the plastic wrap. He did not look at Marcus. He looked at the inventory seal, the fresh disposal tag, and the tiny green light still pulsing beneath the scanner cover. 2 hours later, Claire convened a closed test in the thermal lab. The recovered cache showed that page 47 had once contained technical notes, but the image was too damaged to identify an author. It proved someone had replaced a page. It did not prove who had written the original. Marcus stood behind the control station in a charcoal suit, calm again. Daniel watched from the glass observation booth. Ava remained near the door with a compliance officer, her yellow B-shaped USB sealed inside a clear evidence bag. "We will run one limited cycle," Claire said. "No production load." Marcus folded his hands. "I still believe this gives a maintenance employee an inappropriate platform." Ethan checked the floor markings before answering. One technician was standing inside the pressure boundary. Ethan asked him to move behind the yellow line. Marcus smiled faintly. "We have engineers managing safety." "Then one of them should have moved him." The technician stepped back. A chair leg scraped once against the concrete, then stopped. The engine housing sat beneath white laboratory lights, all steel ribs, braided hoses, and black insulation. Cooling fans filled the room with a steady mechanical roar. Ethan was not allowed to access the software or touch the prototype. He accepted the restriction without argument. Instead, he walked slowly along the barrier and listened. At first, there was only fan noise. Then, beneath it came 3 short vibrations and 1 longer tremor. Traveling through the return line, Ethan took a paper cup from the water dispenser, filled it halfway, and placed it on the flat edge of the engine housing. Marcus gave a quiet laugh. "What exactly is that supposed to establish? Whether the vibration belongs to the sensor or the machine? A cup of water isn't engineering." Ethan watched the surface. "No. But it doesn't know how to lie." The test began. Numbers climbed across the monitors. At 10 seconds, the water remained level. At 14, a thin ripple crossed the cup. At 16, the surface pulled sharply toward the cooling return. Ethan looked at Claire. "Reduce load before 18 seconds. Marcus did not turn from the screen. "The model shows stable pressure. The model is reading the wrong place. We follow validated instrumentation." "Then watch the cup." At 17.8 seconds, the water snapped against one side. The engine shuddered, and the automatic system cut power before the second cycle completed. The roar collapsed into a low metallic winding sound. For several seconds, no one spoke. The air conditioning became suddenly audible above them. Claire lowered one hand from the folder she had been holding. Ava's shoulders loosened near the doorway. Ethan did not look at Marcus. He checked that the technician behind the yellow line was unharmed, then picked up the cup and wiped the small ring of water from the housing with his shop cloth. "It could still be sensor drift," Marcus said. His tone remained professional, but the tendon beside his jaw had tightened. We should reset the equipment and handle further review privately. Claire looked toward the damaged scan projected on the lab monitor. Explain the dashed line on page 47. Marcus answered too quickly. It's a redundancy path. Ethan turned his head. It isn't. Marcus's eyes moved toward him. Ethan pointed through the glass at the cooling loop. A redundancy path is complete. That line stops before the secondary channel because it was never validated. I called it an unverified bridge. The compliance officer opened the scanner metadata. Buried in the recovered text layer was the phrase unverified bridge, entered years before Marcus's patent filing. The room went still again, but this time no one looked at Ethan's uniform. Claire quietly told her assistant to retain the original test log, preserve the scanner image, and suspend all automatic deletions. Marcus asked that they avoid drawing conclusions from fragmentary archival language. Ethan did not answer. He was staring at the asset number attached to the metadata. It belonged to his old engineering workstation, a machine the company claimed had been destroyed 6 years earlier. According to the service record now glowing on Claire's screen, that same machine had been accessed in the building less than a month ago. The asset number on Claire's screen led them below the main building, past the freight elevator and into a maintenance corridor where the air smelled of dust, warm wiring, and old insulation. That workstation was destroyed 6 years ago, Marcus said. Then why was it serviced last month? Claire asked. Asset codes get reused. Ethan said nothing. He followed the number stamped in the service record until it ended at a gray ventilation cabinet bolted above a row of aging control panels. The label on the cabinet had been painted over twice, but the final 4 digits were still visible beneath the chipped enamel. They matched his old workstation. Ethan removed the access plate with a flat screwdriver. Inside, mounted beside the fan controller, was the motherboard from the computer he had used when Lily was 5 and his wife still left coffee beside his drafting table. One corner carried a crescent-shaped scorch mark he remembered making with a slipped soldering iron. Claire leaned closer but did not touch it. Can it still hold data? Sometimes old systems keep what people forget to erase. Daniel arrived before compliance finished photographing the cabinet. He loosened his tie as he walked. This equipment controls building ventilation. Removing it could shut down the lower floors. Ethan looked toward the ceiling vent. The airflow had already weakened, and 2 night shift workers were wiping sweat from their necks. Give me 20 minutes to move the load to the backup controller, he said. Daniel stared at him. This is evidence now. It's also air. Claire nodded to the compliance officer. Document every step. Let him make the transfer. Ethan did not ask for access to the recovered files. He opened his toolbox, bridged the fan controls to the spare board, and kept the ventilation running while the forensic technician removed the old hardware. The choice cost them time. It also kept 40 people from being sent into a hot basement while executives argued over ownership. When the first image appeared on the forensic monitor, Ethan recognized the file structure before he recognized the words. A thermal simulation opened in black and blue lines, dated 6 years earlier. The unfinished cooling bridge pulsed red at the exact point where the prototype had failed at 17.8 seconds. A second file contained an email addressed to Marcus Hale. The message warned that the design could not be released until the secondary path was validated. The signature block had been cut away. No author, Marcus said quietly. No proof. The printer beside the technician clicked, then stopped halfway through a page. The room fell silent enough for Ethan to hear the backup fan turning behind the wall. Claire studied the email, not with sympathy, but with the concentration of someone comparing a pattern. Show me the service history tied to this board. 3 maintenance entries appeared. 3 different prototype numbers. 3 overheating failures across 4 years. Every repair had been assigned to Ethan after his reassignment. His handwritten notes described pressure instability, incomplete coolant routing, and temporary field corrections. He had been keeping derivatives of his own stolen design alive without ever being told what they were. Ethan's fingers closed around the silver pencil in his pocket. For one moment, Anger moved across his face so sharply that Claire saw the man he might have become if bitterness had been allowed to lead him. "We can release this now," Ava said from the doorway. "The service logs, the scan, all of it." Ethan looked at her yellow B-shaped USB inside its evidence pouch. "Not yet. They used you for years. And if we rush it, they'll call the files corrupted and you reckless." Marcus's mouth tightened. At least one person understands the danger of public accusations. Ethan turned toward him. "I understand the danger of weak evidence." Claire ordered security to retrieve the archive box listed in the service history. The shelf was empty. Camera footage showed Daniel entering the records room and leaving with a cardboard box beneath his arm. Then the image jumped forward for minutes. Daniel folded his arms. The camera dropped during a storm. A compliance analyst opened the building log. The night had been clear. Power had remained stable. A contractor invoice showed the camera feed had been disconnected manually for exactly 4 minutes, using a maintenance authorization from Daniel's office. Sweat gathered near Daniel's hairline, though the corridor had cooled. "This can be explained," he said. Privately, Claire's phone vibrated. Her assistant had found one remaining item from her late father's desk. A silver fountain pen heavier than it should have been. Inside its barrel was a tiny encrypted memory card. Scratched into the metal beneath it was an open circle. Claire set the pen on the table between herself and Ethan. Neither of them touched it. Then Ava's laptop chimed with a new production schedule showing that the next day's public engine test had been raised beyond the load Claire had approved. By 9 the next morning, the 18th floor boardroom had been arranged like a courtroom without a judge. The black table reflected ceiling lights in long white bars. Investors occupied one side, safety officers and engineers the other, while maintenance workers stood near the glass wall because no one had placed chairs for them. The same chair Daniel had pushed against the wall the day before remained there. Ethan entered in his blue maintenance uniform, carrying his toolbox and the service log in a clear evidence sleeve. He looked tired, not triumphant. Claire stood at the head of the table with her father's silver fountain pen beside a sealed laptop. She had the authority to stop the test, expose the records, or protect the company's image. For now, she did none of those things. Marcus began before Ethan reached the table. "What we have witnessed is an unfortunate collision of incomplete archives, personal grief, and understandable resentment." His voice was warm, almost sorrowful. He held up the blueprint from the title image, its corner still creased beside the test code. Mr. Cole recognized his daughter's initials on a company document. That may feel persuasive. It is not proof of authorship. On the screen appeared a clean enlargement of the Open Circle LC. "Anyone could have added that mark," Marcus continued. "A family photograph can be recreated. A damaged scanner cache can be misread. Old hardware can contain corrupted files." A murmur moved along the investor side of the table. For a moment, Marcus seemed to regain the room. He did not deny the evidence. He separated it into pieces small enough to dismiss. Rebecca placed the amended acknowledgement form beneath the blueprint. Ethan's handwritten sentence, "I acknowledge access, not authorship," looked defensive under the hard white light. "Mr. Cole refused standard protections," Marcus said. Then he advised an intern not to cooperate. "His financial and professional motives are obvious." Daniel stepped toward Ava. "Ms. Bennett is not authorized to attend this session." Ava held the sealed B-shaped USB against her chest. Before security could move, Ethan pulled the chair from the wall and placed it beside the compliance officer. "She has a right to hear what is said about her." "This is an executive review," Daniel replied. "She is part of the evidence." Ethan waited until Ava sat down. Then he remained standing. Claire watched that small exchange before looking back at Marcus. "Continue." Marcus displayed Ethan's old disciplinary record and the report from the failed test 6 years earlier. "This is not revenge against Mr. Cole. It is responsible governance. We cannot let sympathy replace standards." Ethan rested both hands on the handle of his toolbox. He did not defend his career, his grief, or the years spent repairing machines under people who used his work. I'm not asking anyone to punish him because of me, he said. I'm asking you not to bury the truth twice. Claire nodded to compliance. The first exhibit appeared. The Open Circle LC on the blueprint beside the school science fair photograph dated 2 years before Marcus's patent. The second followed. Scanner metadata containing the phrase unverified bridge matched to Ethan's recovered thermal simulation. The third was the stained service tag bearing Daniel's signature, followed by 3 handwritten repair entries tied to derivative prototypes. Marcus folded his hands. None of those items establishes an unbroken chain of custody. The room shifted again. It was a strong answer, and several board members leaned back as though the matter had become uncertain once more. Then Ethan noticed the production schematic displayed beside Marcus. The sensor sequence was wrong. Numbers assigned to the east return line now belonged to the west housing. He stepped closer to the screen. Who reordered the sensors? Daniel answered before Marcus could. Routine calibration. Ethan looked toward him. When? Before the safety review. What time? Daniel's jaw tightened. That is in the log. Claire motioned to her assistant. The access history appeared. Daniel's account had changed the sensor order 12 minutes before the meeting and raised the test load above Claire's approval. The room stopped moving. Marcus recovered first. A technical adjustment is not sabotage. The public demonstration should proceed so we can resolve this through measurable results. Ethan studied the live schematic. If he used the displayed sensors, every prediction he made would appear wrong. Daniel pointed toward the test chamber visible beyond the glass. Unless Mr. Cole no longer trusts his own theory. Ethan's eyes moved to the yellow floor markings. One technician was still checking a coupling inside the pressure zone. Clear everyone who doesn't need to be there. That will alarm the investors, Marcus said. Good, Ethan replied. Alarm is cheaper than an ambulance. Claire transferred emergency shutdown authority to the independent safety chief. She ordered the technician removed, the physical pressure gauges activated, and every data stream preserved outside Daniel's control. Marcus smiled for the room, but a pulse had begun beating. Beside his temple, as the engine came online, Ethan heard a vibration traveling through the pipes from the wrong side of the chamber. 3 short strikes, then silence. He looked at the reversed sensor map, then at the silver pen waiting beside Claire's unopened laptop. The test was about to begin, and the final memory card was still locked. The physical pressure gauge jumped before the digital screen moved. Shut it down, Ethan said. The sensors are stable, Marcus replied. They're reading the wrong side. Beyond the glass, the engine climbed toward production load while the reversed sensor map painted a calm green line across the monitors. Ethan stood beside the yellow boundary, one hand resting on his closed toolbox, listening past the roar of the cooling fans. The first pressure pulse struck the return pipe like a hammer beneath the floor. The second came harder. Ethan looked through the chamber window and saw the technician still crouched near the eastern coupling, gathering a cable Daniel had told him to retrieve. Clear the east passage now. Marcus stepped toward the control desk. Do not interrupt the demonstration. Claire turned to the independent safety chief. Move him. The technician ran behind the barrier as the third pulse traveled through the steel. Ethan reached for the manual control. Open auxiliary valve 7. Cut load after the pressure crosses 90. Daniel's face lost color. That valve will destabilize the fuel line. No one had identified valve 7 in the public review. Claire's eyes shifted toward him. How do you know which valve he means? Daniel looked at the screen instead of answering. The mechanical gauge passed 88. Ethan opened the auxiliary line. At 91, the safety chief cut power. A coupling split inside the chamber with a flat metallic crack. White vapor swept across the passage where the technician had been kneeling seconds earlier, struck the empty railing, and curled harmlessly toward the extraction vents. The engine wound down. In the sudden quiet, a single bolt rolled across the chamber floor and tapped the glass. No one in the boardroom moved. Ethan watched the pressure fall before taking his hand from the control. Is everyone clear? He asked. The safety chief checked the camera views and nodded. Only then did Ethan turn back toward the table. Ava stood beside the compliance officer, both hands around the sealed evidence pouch. Her voice shook, but her words did not. The sensors were not calibrated. She connected the preserved log to the projector. They were reassigned. Daniel's account appeared beside a timestamp, 12 minutes before the meeting. The same account had raised the load beyond Claire's written approval. Marcus stared at the report. A configuration error does not establish theft. No, Ethan said. It establishes danger. Daniel stepped forward, his hand trembling against the back of a chair. Even if the data order changed, that still doesn't prove the signature page wasn't destroyed. The sentence landed softly. Then the room understood it. Rebecca's folder stopped halfway open. Claire's assistant lowered her pen. No one had publicly stated that a signature page existed, much less that it had been destroyed. Daniel's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Claire picked up her father's silver fountain pen. The small encrypted card slid from its barrel into her palm. On the underside of the pen, the open circle caught the projector light. Claire typed the phrase Lily had remembered. Leave a door for hope. The file opened. Her late father appeared on the screen, older and visibly ill, seated behind the same black conference table. His recorded voice filled the room. He identified Ethan Cole as the original author of the thermal control design. A second file showed Ethan's warning email with its full signature intact. Then came an audio recording of Marcus recommending that Ethan's name be removed because clients would not trust an engineer grieving his wife. Daniel's voice followed, agreeing to replace the authorship page and redirect later failures into Ethan's personnel file. Marcus reached toward the laptop, then stopped when security stepped beside him. The polished certainty drained from his face. Claire displayed the unfinished cooling path. Complete the final calculation, she told him. Marcus looked at the formula as though seeing it for the first time. The production team handled later revisions. Claire turned to Ethan. He removed his wife's silver mechanical pencil from his pocket, placed the blueprint flat beneath the light, and drew one precise line connecting the unverified bridge to the secondary channel. He explained the pressure balance in 3 quiet sentences. The recovered simulation matched every number. The room did not applaud. The projector fan whirred. Paper shifted beneath Rebecca's hand. Somewhere near the wall, Ava finally released the breath she had been holding. Claire ordered Marcus and Daniel suspended, their access frozen, the test records preserved, and Ava placed under whistleblower protection. Then she faced Ethan before the same people who had watched him stand beside the wall. Whitmore Dynamics stole your work, erased your name, and used your silence against you. I am sorry. Ethan looked at Ava, the maintenance workers without chairs, and the fractured coupling cooling behind the glass. Tell me what this company owes you, Claire said. Ethan closed the pencil and set it beside the restored signature page. Start with the people who never get a room full of witnesses. Claire offered him his title, compensation, and authority to rebuild the program, but Ethan did not answer yet. Now that the company finally knew who he was, the entire room waited to learn what kind of man he would choose to be. The boardroom emptied without applause. Security escorted Marcus Hale and Daniel Price through separate doors while compliance officers sealed laptops, copied access logs, and photographed the fractured coupling beyond the glass. Rebecca Sloan remained behind, her leather folder closed beneath both hands, as Claire ordered an independent investigation into the altered records, coercive agreements, and every safety decision tied to the stolen design. Ava was no longer asked to leave. A whistleblower attorney sat beside her, explained each page before she signed it, and confirmed that her scholarship could not be withheld. Ethan stood near the wall with his toolbox at his feet. The same men who had once moved their water glasses away from his oil-stained hands now waited for him to name a price. He did not. For conditions, Ethan said. Claire opened a clean legal pad.
I'm listening.
Independent reporting. Counsel for interns and hourly workers. A path from maintenance into engineering. And an audit trail no manager can erase. A board member shifted in his chair. Those changes will be expensive. Ethan looked through the glass at the empty passage where a technician might have died. So was today. Claire wrote down every word. The investigation lasted 4 months. Marcus lost his position, the compensation attached to the project, and the professional standing he had built around Ethan's work. Daniel was terminated and referred to authorities for evidence destruction and deliberate safety interference. Rebecca faced an ethics review and later helped void the silence agreements she had once defended. None of them were dragged before cameras for public humiliation. Their consequences arrived through signed findings, restored records, and systems that no longer depended on their version of events. Ethan's authorship was returned to the patent, the design archive, and every technical paper that had carried Marcus's name. Claire apologized again, this time in the maintenance bay, with Ava, the night crew, and Lily present. She did not call Ethan a hidden genius or a tragic father. She said the company had ignored his warnings, benefited from his labor, and mistaken his restraint for weakness. Then she turned to Ava and acknowledged that an intern had protected evidence while senior leaders tried to frighten her into silence. Ava's scholarship was restored. Her university received a corrected report and a formal apology. She accepted a permanent position in independent testing, where no manager whose work she reviewed could control her career. Ethan accepted the role of Director of Safety Engineering only after the board approved all 4 conditions in writing. His blue maintenance uniform remained hanging inside his new office. He kept the toolbox beneath his desk, not as a reminder of how far he had fallen, but of what his hands had done when no one believed his name belonged on the blueprint. Months later, the Cole Safety and Training Center opened in the renovated lower wing. Its classrooms connected maintenance apprentices, interns, and engineers at the same workbenches. Above the entrance, beneath Ethan's name, were the words for every voice they tried to silence. Lily stood safely between Ethan and Claire during the dedication, holding the old blue notebook against her sweater. No one asked her to explain the fraud or face the men who had caused it. She only watched while Ethan placed the original blueprint behind protective glass. His name had been restored to the author box. In the corner, the LC remained inside its open circle. Lily lifted her mother's silver mechanical pencil and added a tiny matching symbol to the center's first student sketchbook. "You left the circle open again," she said. Ethan crouched beside her. "Somebody may still need a way in." Claire did not reach for him in front of the crowd. Trust had not become romance simply because justice had arrived. She spent the following months attending safety reviews, answering hard questions, and publishing the first audit report without removing the pages that embarrassed her company. One evening, she came to Ethan's apartment carrying pizza in one hand and that public report in the other. Lily showed her how to draw a mechanical bird. Ethan pulled out the empty chair at the kitchen table, the same quiet gesture he had once offered Ava when fear had left her standing alone. Claire sat down without asking whether she had been forgiven. Outside, traffic moved beneath the apartment window. Inside, the radiator clicked, pencil lead whispered over paper, and no one hurried to fill the silence. Ethan's toolbox rested by the door, no longer proof that the world had reduced him, but proof that dignity could keep working long after power had stopped listening, and that kindness, given without witnesses, could still leave a door open for justice.